All right, welcome. This is the Empower Your Sobriety, the Power of Affirmations. Affirmations, outstanding. Are you practicing them? I'm delighted to be here with you. This is the second module of three, and it's all about the method. So, welcome back. My name's Adam. I have poured in a great deal of my philosophical background and like loads of investment intellectually in education into this module and to produce, and I'll continue to produce more trainings like this. I have a master's of education, master's degree in philosophy and religion, and a master's degree in anthropology. So many degrees I'm bringing to bear. And I had 14 years of sobriety, which is incidentally like more spiritually potent than so much of my intellectual heritage here. But this second module is all about the methodology. So in our first module, we talked about an overview of the practices and why people struggle with practices of affirmation, what really affirmations are doing to your brain, and also how they are producing opportunities for envisioning the person we wish to manifest, to think about the person we want to manifest in the world. And the correlation and the congruence between the heart and the mind is how we practice affirmations. We're going to get more into that in the third module about the practice specifically, but I wanted to go over the methodology because the methodology is how I practice all of my therapeutics and coaching. When I'm working with one-on-one clients, it is from an integral method, and that is my intellectual history, an intellectual inheritance, this integral method. So we're going to talk about integral method and the methodology, the theory behind how we practice, which is going to help you understand the frame for which to approach really potent and affirmations that are effective in your life because they apply to all areas of your life. Okay, let's get into it. I'm so glad you're here. If you're coming to us from YouTube or from Sober Church on School, welcome. If you're coming to us from Sober Church, I've linked the PDF to this so you can follow along and use that as well as a tool. So let's dive in. So the integral methodology, there is a history of integral theory. It has to do with, in my personal intellectual history, Ken Wilber, Sri Aurobindo, and Teilhard de Chardin. And this is all about really integrating the East and the West, Eastern and Western thought, and like that, integrating the scientific paradigms with religious perspectives and understandings and methodologies as well. And we're going to look at more closely at this thing called meta theory. So, and what is a meta theory? And this meta theory is sort of like a theory of everything. A toe, a T-E. Okay, a theory of everything, which directly comes from Ken Wilber and the four quadrants. He calls it an AQUA model. In about 1995, he coined that. That has to do with the individual and collective and the subjective and objective dimensions of our experience, our human experience, and really even non-species, non-human, our companion species, non-human experience as well, because it applies there too. That's why it's called a meta theory. And so just a little bit about these couple of guys. If you have this link, if you're in Sober Church, you can click these links and it just takes you to the Wikipedia pages. You can, of course, just Wikipedia them. But I'll start with Sri Aurobindo and Teilhard de Chardin, because those are a little bit older. Sri Aurobindo, he represents the Eastern legacy of this lineage, this intellectual lineage of integral. He came up with this thing called integral yoga. And it was a philosophical perspective. And he also approached this in a way to understand levels of consciousness so that you could ascend levels of consciousness without going into it too deeply. You can read all about it in his Life Divine or his work with on the Bhagavad Gita or other approaches. But he was a profound Eastern, sort of an anchor for my understanding of integral from the East. And then Teilhard de Chardin really helped me peel back the layers of what he calls, and others in this other lineage of my tradition, of integrating science and religion called the evolution of consciousness, so that he recognized, like, oh my God, our consciousness also has a lineage, also has a history, and has changed and developed and evolved over time. And so they call this the evolution of consciousness. And Teilhard de Chardin had an interesting sort of narrative, because he was a paleontologist, and then he was a sort of a rigorous scientist, and then he was a French guy, and then he moved over into Catholicism and sort of reignited his faith in the divine, and did this whole integrative method in his book called The Human Phenomena, profound, and helped me understand sort of the as the evolution of our scientific enterprise and our religious enterprise, and how they are integrated. Teilhard de Chardin blew my mind, to be frank, and he was, and so both Chardin and Teilhard de Chardin were like early 19th century. Like I think Teilhard de Chardin died in like 1950, or maybe that's true. Yeah, sure, been a little bit earlier than him. So then you have Ken Wilber, really was a synthesizer, and all these have offshoots, and there are other thinkers that are been pivotal to my approach. But Ken Wilber really synthesized these divergent models into an integral theory, or an integral methodology. And he was doing sort of like a synthesizing meta theory. And so it was really quite profound. In 1995, he came out with the AQUA model it's called All Quadrants, All Levels. And a lot of the maps of consciousness that we get, so the stage development of consciousness, which we see in this is like psychology 101 and like human development, right? We go through stages of consciousness as we go from an infant to an adult, and even into later life stages, right? Those are a nice map that Piaget and others framed all this. But Ken Wilber did an interesting thing, because he was integrating or including diverse intellectual traditions, especially Eastern thought and Western thought, and with his insisted his interest in the sciences and religious experiences, and integrating that too. So without further ado, we're going to use all that and to understand the map for applying effective affirmations. Okay, let's move on. Next slide, please. So Ken Wilber came up with this integral map, and now tons of people have used this in all sorts of methodologies. And here we're applying it to affirmations, but I'm going to explain this integral map to you first. Okay, so obviously you got 4 quadrants there, and you can see in the upper left-hand quadrant, we have the individual interior. So it's like, oh, the sense of I, right? I have an interior, the interiority. That's my psychology, my feelings, my thoughts, my perspectives, my beliefs as an individual. And in the upper right hand, we have the individual exterior. Oh, well, that's like my physical body. That's what you all see me represented, my behaviors and my actions, and all the things you can measure as a physical form, right? My biology. But we also have not only the individual, but we also have the collective. So we all have, every theory, like every entity has a collective interior as well. So the collective interior, that's like my relationships. Oh, relationships. New study, well, whatever. It seems obvious, but new study from Harvard just came out. It was like, turns out it was a longevity study. So immense amount of data. It was like, turns out the greatest indicator for longevity in life, in the human life, the quality of your relationships. That is the interior collective, right? The way that you have shared beliefs, right? But also your it's a collective. So your family and your friends, and let's see. And so the last quadrant, and so that's lower left, right? And the last quadrant, of course, is your exterior collective. Sorry, I clicked on that mind psyche too soon. To your exterior collective, which is, of course, the ecology, your environments, right? So when we're creating affirmations, obviously, we want for them to be represented in all 4 columns all four quadrants. Actually, the affirmations we're going to do, we are going to just focus on the three quadrants: mind, psyche, your biology, your body, and your relationships or your society, right? So it's like bio, psycho, social. We're going to, a lot of the way you can create affirmations based upon your environment and your ecology. But a lot of that sort of by necessity are dimensions of things you don't have control over, like the sun and the culture within which you are embedded, etc. Your sort of the networks of ecologies that you exist in. Okay, now it's going to get even more complex. Are your seatbelts buckled? So when we can formulate affirmations, we can understand that this map we can dive down. So obviously, the goal is being a balanced life between giving and receiving. We can see in the center a love of life. So ideally, if you're balancing all four quadrants and you are manifesting like a fulfilled relationship to all four quadrants, you are going to experience the love of life, or calibrate. Your life will calibrate at a very high level of conscientiousness. So when we talk about affirmations in the next module, we're going to dive into the practice of affirmations. But here, just quickly, there's the 80-20 rule, which if you're looking, the 80-20 rule is, and I'll close back here. Wait, I thought I had it. Okay, it's in the next module. But the 80-20 rule is fundamental because 80% of your wellness is going to come from the centers, right? From the center. So like 80% of your wellness in the upper left-hand quadrant, the interior individual, is going to come from your belief systems, from your spiritual practices, right? The way you practice affirmations, right? The way you are generating creativity, the way you're learning, right? And then, of course, less is going to be from like just taking leisure, right? So the 80-20 principle, and I will just say another caveat about this. This is only a map. So a lot of the boundaries are fuzzy. So Ken Wilber was really critiqued about this, but as a methodology, as a map, it's so helpful, so helpful. But a lot of the boundaries, you can argue, like, oh, well, maybe the belief system is actually more vital. And actually, I was just editing this map and thinking about some of the dynamics, and I was looking at moving the belief system because I think the belief system is actually more fundamental. It's got is more closer to the 80% of wellness. And so, but journaling is sort of like an ancillary or an add-on to forms of spiritual disciplines like prayer and meditation, but maybe not so crucial as your ability to be creative, your belief systems, etc., and your sort of like psychic wellness, where you can create affirmations based upon that. Also, the individual exterior is sort of a biology, and it sort of makes sense. Like, oh my God, 80% of my wellness does come from my sleep, my nutrition, my movement. Like, if you are not sleeping, you are not well. Like, and if you are eating trash, you are going to be unwell. And this is going to be fundamental to your biological system. So we want to create affirmations that have great leverage, right? That specifically entrain our thoughts to envision a healthier, stronger physical body and movement, nutrition, and sleep. And of course, supplements and our forms of relationships with doctors and everything are vital and fundamental. And then, of course, we move to the interior collective, and it's like our relationships, so primary, 80% of wellness, like family, friends, home, obviously. And we can create affirmations based upon that. And we're going to talk about the practice later, but like just as an example, like I know that a loving attitude toward my parents is going to bring me fulfillment, right? That's an affirmation. And you can even create goals based upon that, which we'll get into the next module. And then the last one, the environment, of course. And this is where it gets fuzzy. It's like, well, just my professional life, maybe that could fit in the interior collective and the way in which I serve communities. And in this map, it's over in the environment, the exterior collective. But you can see, we can use this map, which is going to be, the boundaries are a little bit fuzzy, but some of them are a little bit more clear than others, but we can use it to create concrete affirmations, which is what we're going to do in the next module. So I hope you come with us. This is the end of this module 2, and there's an immense amount of study and depth that you can take this type of work. But I hope you enjoyed it. And again, like if you want accountability for building affirmations, or if you want to work with me one-on-one, I'm here to help. You can scan the QR code and you can go to the Calendly and set up a free one-on-one meeting with me, and we can talk about your affirmations. We can talk about things that you want to overcome specifically with your affirmations, or ways in which you can create a deeper fulfilling life practicing these spiritual principles. My website's there as well. And come join us over on Sober Church if you haven't already. The school community is really sweet. There's a lot of resources there. And if you haven't heard it yet today, you are loved, and I'll see you in module 3.